listen.
Never in my life associated the word boring with baseball.
We know what's up.
Me?
Yeah.
Famous?
Yeah.
And I'm like giddy over there smiling like, we're about to win this shit.
Did everyone give you crap? Give me a good host story.
I'm not picking it up.
We both love the game.
We talk about it every day.
Can't get enough baseball.
Having some popcorn, you're fooling around your phone.
I'd have to wait in line for 3 hours.
Hang on, because it's about to be a wild ride.
Another episode of Pitch and Moan. I am your host, Courtney Finnicum, and I have the distinct pleasure of having on old friend, two-time World Series winner, but most importantly, White Sox World Series winner, Aaron Rowand. Aaron, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me.
How are you doing? You said you're in Vegas. What's going on in your life these days?
I've lived here in Vegas for the last 25 years. I just moved down to San Clemente about a month and a half ago. But I'm back up here. I got some meetings and some different things I needed to get done, so I had to drive up and probably heading back down to the beach tomorrow.
Well, it is great to have you on. It's great to see you. And for the people that are not watching us on YouTube, Aaron Rowand's still rocking the backwards baseball hat. That has kind of been your symbol for your entire career. So I do love to see that we're still doing that. That's awesome. But we are fast approaching, which is hard to believe because we haven't aged a bit, you and I. Hard to believe we are fast approaching the 20-year White Sox reunion that is going on the weekend of July 11th. I mean, can you believe that it's already been 20 years for this team?
It seems like yesterday.
Seems exactly like yesterday. And the fact that we are still reliving these incredible moments and we're going to celebrate this team is awesome. So first question for you right out of the gates, do you still keep in touch with the 05 team?
Yeah. And like I was telling you before, the only guy that's hard to get in touch with is Iguchi, because I don't even know the prefix for Japan.
Yeah, I'd imagine that is a little difficult. I mean, you ran into Juan Uribe, you said recently, too, of all people.
Yeah, when I was coaching with the White Sox, I was the minor league outfield base running coordinator. We had to go down to the Dominican because we have an academy down there. So we went down there a couple times a year, and when I would go down there, I would call him, and he'd come over and say hi. And like I said, man, he looks exactly the same. They don't, the Dominicans do not age.
They do not.
They do not age. Or like my good friend says, black don't crack.
That's it. And honestly, that is the truth. I mean, last time I saw Juan Uribe, he looked great too. So it's like these guys don't age despite it being 20-year anniversary. Pretty crazy. Now, are you coming in for the reunion?
Sadly, I can't. And
that is brutal.
I'm telling you, it breaks my heart. I'll give you the background on it, and hopefully I'm glad that we're doing this so that hopefully the fans can understand what's going on with it.
Please.
So I don't know if you remember last year when the whole Microsoft thing happened and all the planes went down and they canceled pretty much all the flights everywhere.
Yep.
Well, I was in the airport. I was 30 minutes from boarding my plane when it happened. And wow. I had booked a trip to Curacao at Sandals to go and meet some of our good friends for their anniversary. But we had to fly from Vegas to Miami to Curacao. And so they canceled the flight. We were in the airport till 4:30 in the morning. Finally, they said, okay, the flight's going to leave at 10 a.m. So we went home, slept for a little bit, came back to the airport, got on the plane, but we were going to have to wait another day in Miami because they only have one flight a day that leaves in the morning from Miami to Curacao.
Yep.
So then we got back in the morning, we boarded the plane. We sat on it for about 2 hours. They took us back off the plane, sat there again for another 5 hours before they go, you can go get your bags if you don't want to go because the flight's not leaving until tomorrow. And so we started doing the numbers, and my 10-day vacation was going to turn into 4. And for flying that far, I was like, not doing it.
Not worth it. Yep, not worth it.
So I called Sandals and whatnot, and they said, we will give you a credit for $15,000 that I paid for the damn thing. And they said, we'll give you a credit, but you have to use it within the next year. or you have to book it within the next year. And so we waited the full year because we're going to go with our friends again for their anniversary. But now we're going to St. Lucia, and I can't push it back and I can't change any of the dates. So I had booked it over a year ago.
Yeah.
And now, and then when I was in Chicago 3 weeks ago, Scott Reifert told me that the reunion is going to be, you know, the 11th and 12th, I think.
11th, 12th, and 13th. Yep.
Yeah. And so, sorry, the wind's blowing out here. So I'm like, I can't change it because if I do, I'm out 15K. And I was like, of all the times, like literally there's like a 10-day period and then they're going to have the reunion like right in the middle of it. And I was thinking about trying to like change flights and you know, maybe miss a couple days or whatnot. But the actual days of the thing is our friend's anniversary.
I mean, that is the timing of that is absolutely incredible. I mean,
and it breaks my heart because I love all the guys on the team. I still talk to everybody. And I know that I'm going to get tons of text messages and stuff about what a jerk off I am for not being there.
well, and I'm glad we are doing this 2 weeks in advance too, so we can get ahead of this and the fans understand why you're not going to be showing up, because people need to understand that you were such an important part of that team and that team's success. And the fact that you're not going to be there, that's going to break a lot of Sox fans' hearts. That's brutal.
It kills me. I swear to God, it's killing me already. And I know that when the dates start coming around in a couple weeks, I'm gonna be out of the country going, I should be sitting in Chicago right now.
And getting your well-deserved accolades, because, you know, you guys broke an 88-year championship drought in this city. Like that's insane. You know, a lot of people outside of Chicago don't realize how special the '05 White Sox were, mostly because the White Sox don't get enough credit, you know, from the national outlets, the ESPNs of the world. You know, that team's been left off of a lot of lists, which is BS, as we both know. So this team deserves to be celebrated, and we're definitely going to miss you that weekend. That is tough. That's tough to hear.
11-1 should be up there with some of the best.
11-1 should be up there with some of the best. And what the White Sox pitchers did, I mean, I don't think we'll ever see that again in the playoffs. I don't think that ever happens.
Never.
So this team should be celebrated. I'm glad we're doing it, but you will be missed. That's very, very sad for all of us here. But let's jump into your career a little bit, because a lot of people know you as this hard-nosed player. You know, we joked a little bit about offline about you having CTE of all the times you've hit your face into the center field wall. But you were the kind of guy that was a true grinder. And a lot of Sox fans remember that we had the grinder rules, you know, back in the championship days. And for those that don't know what the grinder rules are, you know, kind of a quick synopsis: obviously winning, MVP mentality, intense effort. Like those were sort of the pinpoints of what a grinder is. And a lot of people say that you were the prototypical grinder mentality player. And I'm just curious, just kind of knowing that about your career and what you brought to the Sox, how did you implement that in the White Sox clubhouse?
I think a lot of people think being a leader is a lot of talking and this and that, whatever. But I think being a leader is going out and playing the game the right way every day and just leading by example. And the effort that you put in every day, the effort you put in the off season, in spring training, during the season, people will gravitate towards that. And then along with that part of it, I think it's trying to bring your teammates together, whether it be not just on the field or in the clubhouse, but off the field too, and really trying to tie the knot as far as all the guys in the clubhouse becoming family. And when you can come to a common goal and like not just about winning, but about the kind of team we want to be and the kind of group we want to be. And I think Ozzie had a lot to do with that, you know, and we had great guys in the clubhouse with Jermaine, Joe, AJ, Paulie, John, Mark, like we just like Carl Everett, even like Carl was amazing for that clubhouse.
Yep.
And we had a lot of laughs. We had a lot of funny guys. We had some serious guys that we needed to lighten up occasionally. Guys that wanted to hang themselves after one bad game, and everybody's like, "All right, man, hey, we're going out. Let's go have a couple beers and like chill the hell out. There's always tomorrow." Kenny brought in, I think, really made the difference as far as how the team coexisted like day in and day out. Because during the season, you spend more time with those guys than you do with your own family.
Exactly.
And like hours of the day and all the grinding that goes on. And there's ups and downs. It's like it is a family atmosphere. Sometimes guys are in good moods. So, everybody has their down days or their bad days where they're not, feeling good about something, whatever. But everybody always picked each other up. And I think trying to nurture that and make it habit day in and day out is, I think, what really made that team a very special group.
You mentioned Ozzie Guillen. Ozzie Guillen was obviously the manager at the time of the White Sox. What was his leadership that stood out to you the most?
Well, one, he was funny. I mean, everybody in Chicago knows that.
Still is.
Yeah, he's still the same. I saw him when I was in Chicago a couple weeks ago. I saw him while I was there. He's just the greatest. He's such a personable guy. He stuck up for his players. And as a player, when you know your manager has your back, is like, it was unbelievable. I'll tell you a real quick one. His first year in 2004 when he got hired, like the first day of spring training, we're all in the clubhouse and he does his, he's a new manager. They do the speech, to the team in the clubhouse. And he said, "I want every one of you to know something. If you're not playing well, if you're not doing good, or you screw up and lose us a game, it's not your fault." He goes, "It's my fault because I put you in the lineup." and everybody started laughing, and I was like, I really, really like this guy.
Yep.
It took the stress off, and he made it fun, and he would show up every morning, every day. And Paulie and I were always the first guys in the clubhouse. And Ozzie would walk out in his long johns and he'd go get his New York Times crossword puzzle. And he'd just have a couple stupid things to say and he'd walk back into his office. And me and Paulie would look at each other like, "Yep, that's our guy."
And honestly, that does loosen up the clubhouse. That loosens up the 25 guys that are in there day in, day out, just like you said. And that's unique, that's special. And I do think he was such an important part of the entire energy of that team too, because
he brought people together.
And he also enjoyed players like you, players that played the game the right way, smart, fundamental baseball. And that showed a lot with this 05 team. And that was unique. And, the game misses Ozzie. I mean, Ozzie's doing the pre and post game show for the White Sox. He can be outspoken, which is great, but the game does miss a personality like Ozzie in the dugout. I do think so.
He was one of a kind. Like if you think back to all the managers in the past, in the history, really, guys that stand out are guys like Ozzie, Lou Piniella, Sparky Anderson. I mean, the big personality managers, and that there's a reason that all those guys were so great at what they did, and their teams won. And a lot of it has to do with the guy running the show, and Ozzie was that guy.
And I feel like we've lost a lot of how important managers are to a championship team and to a baseball team in general. And I know I get fired up and annoyed when people say, "Oh, baseball managers don't matter." We both know that's completely BS, of course. Because, like you said, the Lou Pinellas of the world, we can go back and talk about Joe Torre. These guys had a winning mentality. Terry Francona, Terry Francona kind of has this ragtag Reds team. They're doing a hell of a job right now. So it's
Tito's one of the greatest guys in the world.
Could not agree more. He's been on my show a couple times. Tito is the best of the best in this game. I could not agree more. So you mentioned, going out with some of the guys in the 05 team, keeping guys loose. You guys had an anthem for the 2005 World Series team. That, of course, was Don't Stop Believin' by Journey. Now, that was they still play that song at Sox Park, and people still get like really excited about it. So I certainly know the story of how everything came about, but how did Don't Stop Believin' become the anthem for the 2005 Sox?
All right. First and foremost, am I allowed to curse on this show?
Within reason.
Okay. All right. All right. I just wanted to know parameters first, but no, we had an off day in Baltimore, and Joe and AJ and I went down to the hotel, restaurant, bar area.
And when you say Joe Creedy and AJ Przinsky, of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so we were down there sitting there, and we're watching these people come in and set up for a singer. They had a little drum set. One guy was on a guitar, and then there was a girl that came in that was going to sing. But they're setting up all the speakers and everything. And we're sitting there going, wow, what is this going to be? Like, we're just sitting there. We ordered some food, ordered a couple beers. And when they finally got set up and the lady started singing, she was singing like French jazz.
Okay.
Well, couldn't understand a word she was saying, but it was like French jazz. And this just like an acoustic deal. Got this little guy in the back playing the drum. And Joe looks at me and goes, "This is terrible." I'm like, yeah, right? And he goes, "Play some effing Journey." And I go, and I look, and I was like, yeah. And then AJ yells out, "Play some effing Journey," while she's singing. And so after that, it kind of became a joke. And so every time we would go to another field, or even at our park for batting practice, when they do the music over, if it was a terrible song, somebody would yell out to the booth up on top, "Play some effing Journey."
I'm not sure I knew the extent of that, actually. That is tremendous.
And that's where it came from. And then one day I went over to the stereo before one of our games, right before we were walking out to the field for the game, after batting practice and everything. And I put a Journey CD in, and I put Don't Stop Believin' on and cranked it up right before everybody walked out to go to the field. And we went out, I think we scored like 15 or 16 runs that day. And it just happened to be random that it was that day that we scored that many runs. So from there on after, no matter where we were, right before we would walk on the field, we would go put the Journey CD on and play that right before we walked on the field. And then it just took off from there.
I absolutely love that. And then you guys actually ended up going on stage at the parade in, of course, Chicago Grand Park, and singing that song, right?
With Steve Perry.
With Steve Perry. And now, I mean, how cool is that? That must have been wild for you guys.
It was amazing. One, because I'm a huge Journey fan. Two, I love Steve Perry even when he did his own thing.
Yeah.
But AJ's agent had some sort of connection with Steve Perry's agent. And so he comes to me in game one of the World Series, and he goes, "What if we got Steve Perry to come to Houston for the games 3 and 4?" And I'm like, "Dude, if you can get that done, that would be amazing."
Yeah.
Because by this time we're all listening to it every game and whatnot. So his agent calls Steve Perry's agent, and they start talking it out, and he kind of tells him, what's been going on. And so they finalized it. They're like, "Steve Perry's going to be at game 3 and 4 in Houston." And I go, "That is so cool." And so when we got there after game 2, when we flew to Houston, funniest part of the whole situation is the visiting clubhouse manager for the Houston Astros name is Steve Perry.
It's all meant to be.
It was meant to be.
It's all meant to be.
So before game 3, when Steve Perry shows up, he comes down into the clubhouse, and I wanted to be the one to introduce him. He comes in. I'm like, "Steve, thank you so much for coming." I go, and I grabbed the clubby, and I said, "Steve Perry, I want to introduce you to Steve Perry." And they both started dying laughing. It was great.
And that's again the kind of stuff that goes on with chemistry of the team, those little fun, off the beaten path crap that you don't realize goes into when you're playing 6 months with the same exact team for the most part.
Exactly.
Like those little things, just keeping it loose. I love that. I didn't know the extent of that. That is tremendous.
Well, the best part about the entire situation was after we won game 4 and we go into the clubhouse and everybody's getting ready to celebrate with the champagne and stuff. Steve Perry, the clubby Steve Perry, put Don't Stop Believing on the stereo and cranked it up. And everybody, coaching staff, players, we were in a big circle with the real Steve Perry in the middle, singing Don't Stop Believing at the top of our lungs. It was amazing.
That is beyond amazing. I could not love this story enough. Every time it's told, even the little, 90% of it that I knew, it's an all-time story. And that's, again, another way this team bonded. You had mentioned about a couple of teammates that or everyone that you still keep in touch with from the 05 team. One of the biggest guys in not just 05 history, but Sox history, is also getting his flowers that weekend, which of course is Mark Buehrle. Now, Mark Buehrle, personally, to me, top 5 White Sox player of all time. Not many can touch him in the pitching department in my world. He's finally getting a statue, a much well-deserved statue, July 11th. That is amazing. What did Mark Buehrle mean to you as a teammate?
Well, we came up through the minor leagues together. So I remember in Double-A, we were in Birmingham, and he had a no-hitter going into the 9th inning with 2 outs. And this little switch-hitting catcher, his last name was Moon, but I can't remember his first name. He hit a ball I was playing right field at the time. He hit a ball this far inside the foul pole and this far over the fence for a home run with 2 outs in the 9th inning to break up his no-hitter.
Yep.
And I was on my horse trying to go get it. I'm like, I don't care what happens. I'm going to catch this ball. And I ran up and jumped into the fence, and I just didn't get there in time. And that, to me, is like one of the things that I look back on my career and go, wow, if there's one that I could have back, I wish that I had positioned myself in a different spot to be able to go get that for him.
Yeah.
Because he's an amazing guy, an amazing teammate, one of the funniest dudes in the world, and one of the greatest pitchers, in my opinion, in the history of the game to be able to play behind, because he worked so quick. He made the game go by like that. Everybody's focused. Everybody plays good defense behind him because he doesn't take his time in between pitches. He's like, he gets back on the mound, I'm ready to go.
He's the human pitch clock. He was the human pitch clock before the pitch clock.
Yeah, I think you can check it out. I'm not positive, but I want to say in 04, when we first got Jose Contreras.
Yep.
Now, he changed it up in 05, and it was El Duque is the one that told him to do it. Like he used to throw a pitch, and he would walk halfway to home plate to catch the ball. Then he'd walk back around the mound and then get back up. And it was like uncle,
Yep.
And it was so long. And it wasn't until 05 when El Duque got there, and he and El Duque were so close because they played together in New York.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, you got to pick it up. And he took off with that. But I want to say, and you can check if I'm wrong, I want to say that Jose started a game, and it was the longest 9-inning game in the history of the game. And
I will have to look this up.
You do. I don't know if it's still there, but I want to say somebody told me that at the time, like the longest clock time for a 9-inning game. And he was like 3-2 on every batter, and then there's a walk and whatever. And then the next day, Mark threw, and it was Mark. We were playing Cleveland, and Buehrle was throwing against Cliff Lee, and both of them worked fast. And then the next day they said it might be the shortest game, 9-inning game. And I want to say it was an hour and 23 minutes.
I believe you're correct on that. Yep, I remember that.
And I was like, no way we just did this in 2 straight days.
Completely different spectrums there. Completely different spectrums.
And as an outfielder, like when it's like dragging, it's like
I'd imagine
you want to be in. You want to be in it, right? So you're like struggling to keep focus. When Mark was on the mound, he just would mow through, and he pitched to contact all the time, so you knew you were getting balls. And he's just a great guy and one hell of a pitcher, and it's well deserved for him to get a statue, and I'm so proud of him. And Mark, if you're watching this, brother, I love you.
I love that. I love that. We do love Burley, of course. Now, one thing that Chicago fans loved about you, and you showed me this before we got on the air, you're drinking out of your Chicago Bears cooler mug there. Oh, look at that, representing the beautiful blue and orange Chicago Bears. You are a diehard Bears fan, correct?
Don't go anywhere without it.
I see. And now, refresh me, how did that start? How did you become a Bears fan?
When I was a kid, I want to say it was second grade. And I was in elementary school, and I had to do a report. So they walked us over to the library and started looking through books, and obviously I like sports and stuff. And I checked out 2 books. One of them was Walter Payton, and the other one was a Steve Garvey book.
Okay.
And so I read them, and mind you, it's like second grade reading, okay?
Yeah.
But I fell in love with the person that Walter Payton was, not just how great he was on the football field, what he did for the community, the way that he treated his teammates, the way that he trained in the off season, how dedicated he was to what he was doing. And I remember thinking to myself, I want to be like him. And so he was my idol growing up. And I instantly became a Bears fan. And then 2 years later, we won the Super Bowl against Patriots.
Yeah.
And Super Bowl shuffle and all that kind of good stuff. And I was hooked. And I was like, I've been a diehard Bears fan ever since. And when I got drafted by the White Sox out of college, there was about a 45-second period that I didn't even hear Ron Schuler talking to me. He was the GM at the time, right? And he goes, Aaron, this is Ron Schuler from the Chicago White Sox. We drafted you 35th overall, and like literally, I didn't hear anything. All I could think, I'm like, Chicago, the Bear. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna get to play in Chicago. And then all of a sudden, I like snap back in, and I don't even remember what he said for about 45 seconds. But it was a dream come true to be drafted by the White Sox, because I love the Bears. I love the city of Chicago, and I've only grown to love it even more over the years. Yep. And I've traveled the world, gone to so many different places all over the world, and Chicago is the greatest city in the entire world.
I could not agree more with that. And one thing that really sticks out, the more you travel too, the fact that we are a very passionate sports town. You know, we are one of to me, we're in the top when it comes to our how passionate we are about our sports teams.
There's no doubt about it. Just listen to ESPN 1000.
Good call out. Good call. Well, this is Odyssey, so we gotta give the score the shout out. Gotta give the score.
There you go, and the score too. Yeah, I mean,
ESPN 1000, the score. You know how it is. Yeah.
Listening to the callers that call in. Like I used to love just turning it on while I was playing there, and listen to like the people calling in on the show. They're like, "Hey, this guy needs to do this or that, whatever." And I'm like, God love these fans, because they call it like they see it, and that's how it should be.
That's exactly how it should be. And we definitely wear our pride on our sleeve, not just about our sports teams, our city in general. And if I know you recall this, because we all talk about it amongst, the Chicagoans in Chicago, how feisty the Crosstown series used to be, Cubs versus White Sox. Now, you being a diehard Bears fan, you did something that actually united the fan base during a big Crosstown series game before. I believe the story was, you'll have to correct me, you were taking batting practice, or you were out shagging balls.
I was shagging balls at center.
And of course you're getting heckled, right? Getting heckled.
Oh, it was brutal. Like, I know that the series isn't the same as it used to be, but
it's not.
But right when they started doing interleague play and we did the Crosstown series and stuff, like playing the Cubs, whether it be at our place, like I remember one year with Sammy Sosa, his bat broke. He had a cork bat going on.
Oh yeah.
They had to come play us in Southside. He was actually wearing earplugs in right field because he was getting heckled so much.
Yeah.
But when we would go up to Wrigley, it was It was amazing. The fans, like the White Sox fans, the Cubs fans. And then there was the one guy that had the hat that was split down, the Cubs and Sox and the jersey. That guy wore it more than anybody because they were like, you got to pick a side, you know?
And I truly feel that way. You do have to pick a side. There's no such thing as liking both teams here.
You can't. Not in
You can't.
Chicago. Yeah, so we were in Wrigley. I want to say it might have been my first or second year for the series. And I'm getting worn out in center field during batting practice catching balls. And I run into right center field and I catch a ball, and this guy's screaming at me and his girlfriend's yelling at me. And I have my White Sox pullover on top, but I always wore a cutoff Bears shirt underneath. And I used to take batting practice in it. I'd go hit in the cage in it, whatever. So I just pulled up my White Sox pullover and I had my Chicago Bears shirt on. And the guy was like screaming at me, stop. He goes, you're all right, Rowan. You're all right. And so I don't know that I united people, but what I will say is that they stopped wearing me out as much.
See, I'm telling you, that is one thing that Chicagoans can agree on. We may hate each other in the summer, but once September, October hits, we all come together for the Bears, right? I mean, that's the saying. That's what everyone says here.
You want to know one of the greatest? I'll tell you this real quick story that is probably one of the greatest moments of my life.
Okay.
And it was after we won in 2005, and the Bears called me, their PR department called me and asked me if I wanted to be an honorary captain. And I was like, hell yeah. Like, that's like the coolest thing in the world. And they were playing the Packers. So I flew to Chicago, and so I walk out to the 50-yard line, and the ref comes up to me, and then here comes like Olin Kreutz and Brian Urlacher and all the guys, and Mike Brown. Like, all these guys are like friends of mine too, because I've got to know them over the years. And then here comes Brett Favre and Clay Matthews and all these other guys, and all these, you know, in their shoulder pads and their helmets, man, they look huge. And they're standing there. And so they do the coin toss. And here's the thing. When they announced me, this is the best part. So when they announced me to be the honorary captain, and you know, there's like, 65,000 people in the stadium. It was sold out, Bears Packers. And I got a standing ovation from the entire crowd. And I was thinking to myself, there's a lot of Cubs fans here.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
And I'm like, for them to actually stand up and applaud, I was like, might be the greatest moment of my life. So I got out there, and then they flipped the coin, and it drops on the ground, and the Bears won the toss. So all four players from both teams go back to their benches at the sidelines, and then the referee walks the other direction. And I'm standing out on the 50-yard line by myself, and the coin's still sitting on the ground. And I'm like, I sunk down, grabbed it, put it in my pocket, and I walked off. And so I thought I was going to be able to keep it until the PR guy came up to me in the third quarter. He goes, hey, you got that coin? I'm like, damn it.
Yeah, damn. So close.
I wanted to keep it.
Yeah. I mean, that is very, first of all, the fact that you thought that, like, oh my God, there's 65 plus here. And I know that there's a lot of Cubs fans cheering me right now. That is incredible.
That was, like I said, that's one of the greatest moments of my career.
That's a tremendous story. Now, after 2005, you in the off season were actually traded.
Yeah.
Which, saying the words now, 20 years later, I still can't believe that actually happened. Because, you know, you go from winning a World Series, first one in 88 years in the city of Chicago, and now we're starting to break apart major players that were a huge part of that team. So you were in a package with Jim Thome, for Jim Thome. And obviously Jim Thome is, you know, Hall of Fame hitter, incredible guy. But I have to ask, I mean, was that stunning to you? Was that heartbreaking to you? Like, how did you feel winning a championship, then getting shipped off to Philly, 2 months prior for future?
It broke my heart. And, you know, I kind of cursed myself, though, I think. When the World Series DVD unveiling happened, they flew Joe Creedy and I out to Chicago for the DVD unveiling. And, you know, all the media and everybody was there before they showed the video at the movie theater that we were at. And I was doing interviews with some of it, like Scott Merkin and some of the other guys. Anyway, I said to them, I hope that I spend the rest of my career wearing Chicago across my chest because I love playing there and I love the fans and I love the people. I loved, doing community stuff at the Children's Hospital and the VA and all these other things. And I made the mistake of jinxing myself, and I said, I hope I get to spend the rest of my career wearing this uniform. I had pride wearing Chicago across my chest.
Yes.
And representing the most wonderful city in the world. And so I said that. We watched the DVD. The next morning, I got in a cab, and I was driving in the back of a cab back to O'Hare, and the cab driver had ESPN 1000 on. And Bruce Levine comes on, and I love Bruce. Bruce is great.
Yeah.
He's got softest hands in America.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
And he goes, well, I'm hearing that there might be a trade, Aaron Rowand for Jim Thome. And I'm sitting in the back of a cab on the way to O'Hare, and I'm like laughing to myself, like, yeah, right.
Right.
Like that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I flew home, and 2 days later, Kenny called me and told me I got traded for Jim. And for the GOAT. He's the GOAT. I love Jim so much. He's the best.
He is.
And it broke my heart. Like, and Kenny and I were both in tears on the phone. And I understood. Like, I know Kenny, and Kenny wanted to make the team as good as it could possibly be. And he felt like making a move like that was going to better the team. And so if it was at my expense, I wasn't mad at him. I wasn't angry at anybody, but I was heartbroken by it because I never wanted to leave.
And it is a business, and that is the heartbreaking part because you become so connected with your teammates, the city that you're playing in, and I do think that that's very apropos that you were in a cab after watching the DVD of the White Sox '05 World Series, hearing rumors that you're being traded, and it actually comes to fruition. That had to be tough. But you had some great years in Philly. You were an all-star with the Phillies for a year, which was awesome. And then 5 years later, you were in San Francisco and you won another championship. How did that championship in San Francisco differ than the one that you had with the White Sox? Or was there any difference?
Oh, yeah, they were different, definitely. And they were different for different reasons. The championship in Chicago meant, well, one probably meant more to me just simply because a lot of the guys that were on our team, I came up through the minor leagues with. And to think, I remember playing with a lot of these guys in A-ball. And we were just trying to make it to the big leagues, let alone win a World Series together. And so that made it super special. Not only that, but the fact that the White Sox hadn't won for 88 years. And to bring a championship back to the South Side and be able to do it for Jerry too, because he is a diehard baseball guy. And to be able to bring something home for him like that and the South Side fans was amazing. And to be able to do it before the Cubs did it.
Amen.
That was a huge thing for all of us.
Yes.
And then you go to San Francisco, and the Giants hadn't won a World Series since they were in New York. And they'd never won a World Series in San Francisco, and they'd been there 50 years. And to be able to win a World Series in San Francisco was amazing, to be able to have that and say, we were the first team to win a World Series in San Francisco. So they were different. They were both unbelievable. But being the first one that you ever get to win and being able to do it with the guys that you've come through the minor leagues with and that you are family, that meant a lot.
So safe to say that the 2005 White Sox is your favorite World Series, obviously. You wear that one with the most pride.
No doubt.
I love that. So I have to ask, do you still keep up with what's going on with the White Sox organization today?
Yeah. Like I said, I was out there a few weeks ago, and I went to a couple games. And
so obviously, that in 2024, last year, they broke the all-time loss record, 121 losses. the most of all time, at least as of now, as of June 26th. The Rockies might actually beat them out this year. We'll see. We'll see. Yeah. How, as a, you were drafted by the Sox, you won with the Sox. As a former player and someone that was very involved with the organization and the team, even when you retired, how did that make you feel seeing this team just in dire straits?
For me, well, one, obviously it hurts because you don't want, you root for your guys, you root for the guys that are there now. Root for Jerry because I love him, and like all the front office people that have been through a lot too and have been through the trenches with me. And then after, it hurts everybody. Like, it's not oh, well, we'll get them next year. It's watching the game. You look at it and go, there's a lot of things that can be done better. And the attention to detail on some of the things that could have been done better cost a lot of games.
Yes.
I'm not saying that they were going to win the division. They didn't have the roster to do that last year. But there were a lot of games they lost they shouldn't have because of detailed-oriented things, whether it be efficiency on defense, base running. It's not always just about hitting or hitting the home runs and whatnot. It's the attention to the other details that win you that one-run game instead of a loss. So that was the part that broke my heart.
Is that those little things were not being done. Those baseball fundamentals that you pride yourself on were not being done. And in 2025, this year, things are still, they're probably more than likely going to lose 100 plus again. This is going to be their third year in a row of doing that, which when you think about it, that seems abhorrent. That seems absolutely appalling to think that this much losing has gone on in a city like Chicago, like we talked about, great sports town. From what you're seeing with this current team, what do White Sox fans have to be hopeful about?
Well, I think the young pitching on the team, I think, is going to evolve, and I think it's going to get better through experience and through hardship. And that's the hard part for fans. I went through it my first couple of years in San Francisco before we won the World Series, and we had just a bunch of young guys. It almost felt like we threw out a AAA team every day.
Yeah.
Luckily we had good pitching, but we didn't have the rest of it to go with it. But I think with this team, there's good young talent, and I think going through the hardships and stuff of what they're doing right now, I think Chris Getz is doing a good job of trying to bring in talent to try to rebuild that. And then once you get some of these young guys get some experience in the major league level, and you can pick and see which ones are excelling and which guys are like, well, maybe not. Once you get to that point with the young pitching, then you can bring in pieces free agency wise. And I think that's what they're trying to do. I think they're trying to rebuild a good product, but it's going to be, you got to go through some things first. And you got to not only have good, talented players, but you got to have guys mentally and in the clubhouse, guys that are there to do the right thing. They're not there just to be, I'm a Major League Baseball player. It's like, hey, we're here to win. And if you don't want to play the game the right way and do things to win, then you shouldn't be here. And weeding out the guys that don't is a big situation. And there's a reason that some of the guys in the last few years that have been on the roster, guys that I coached in the minor leagues, there's a reason they're gone.
Yep.
And it's not because they weren't talented. But you got to be able to put together a team of guys that are going to go and run through a wall for you or have your back and are going to play the game the right way day in and day out. And if you don't do it, then get rid of them. Because there has to be an effort level. If it's not there, then it's not there.
And there is still, even though the game is evolving, the game is changing, there is still a right way to play the game. And those little fundamentals, those not being defensively sound, like you said, losing games by one run, this team is still doing that, unfortunately. They've lost 20 plus games by one run, which is, horrible. It's horrible. But there is still a right way to play the game. And I do hope and pray that the White Sox now currently have at least a core amount of guys that will do that. Like you said, run through a wall and do things the way they're supposed to be done.
And I think Chris is really good at recognizing those types of things. They're moving in the correct direction. And I told Jerry that a few weeks ago when I was there. I said, you know what? Maybe they don't have the experience yet, but it's obvious the talent level's there. And weeding out the guys that don't want to play hard every day is a huge deal. And I said, I think Chris is doing a really good job of that. And, you know, I when we were at the fundraiser, I said, you know what, we may not win a ton of games this year. We might not win the division or whatnot, but at least for the fan base, we're starting to get in the direction where at least when the fans come to the game, they know what they're going to get every day. And they're going to get effort, and they're going to get guys that want to win. They're going to get guys that are giving everything they got to win. And when you get a team full of guys like that are talented, now you can become dangerous.
I agree. And I do feel like we are seeing a different energy level with the guys that they've currently brought up. And that's been exciting to see. Like you said, they're not going to win 75 games this year, but at least you see things slowly coming together. So right. I agree. Now, my final question for you, and I feel like you are the best guy to ask this to because of the way you played the game. Why is baseball not boring to you?
And I know, okay, if I were talking to the everyday fan, if you don't know the game and you're just watching it to watch it, you don't see the game within the game. And the cat and mouse game between the pitcher and the batter and the pitch sequences of how they're trying to get them out, the movement on defense to be able to defend a certain hitter a certain way, depending on what the pitcher's going to throw. Like, there's so many nuances to the game that, like, if you're not a baseball fan and you don't pay attention very much, you're not going to recognize. And I think that game within the game is what, I think about it this way. Games typically are what, 3.5 hours? And I'm standing in center field for half of that. So I'm trying to keep my head in the game to make sure I get a good jump and go get a ball when it comes in my way. Yep. It's those little things, though, and there's like a game within a game within a game within a game within a game that unless you're a really big baseball fan, you don't even recognize. And so whether it be base running or hitting your cutoff guy, but watching the pitchers throw to the hitters and they have a game plan, they're trying to hit a certain spot to get that guy out because they don't think that he can hit it. And if the pitcher makes a mistake, then it gets hit, and now it's my job to go get it. So it's a very detailed game, and for the layperson that doesn't really watch it much, I understand how it can be boring. And on TV, you get to watch the pitcher, the catcher, and the pitch sequences and stuff. But when you go watch the game in person, you get to watch how all the defenders move pitch to pitch. And it's a well-oiled machine, at least for the good teams. And so I think if the normal fan, I think for the layperson, I understand how it can be boring until you start to see the little nuances inside the game.
And I think that's a perfect description. There are so many layers to this game that a lot of other leagues and sports don't have. And I think that's why Major League Baseball players, such a small percent of you make it, because it is an incredibly hard game, but it's an incredibly special and beautiful game if you know it and you appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So, Aaron, you have been a pleasure. We are going to miss you so much the weekend of the 11th.
I'm sorry. It's breaking my heart too. It's breaking my heart too, I promise.
Oh, I believe you. And I know the fans will believe you too. You're going to get some grief just because that's just the way of the world.
Especially from my teammates too.
Especially from your teammates. I know they'll give you grief and I know you'll take it well, but you will be missed. You are a huge part of the success. I appreciate you coming on. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.